Todd, did you feel like you should have won?
Yes, I did. And if I thought that I wasn't the winner, I would have gave it up. On November 20th, we had a court order, and it was supposed to be a recount. And they asked me to postpone it to December 2nd, and I didn't want to agree on that because I knew somebody had to be sworn in on January 1st. By law, somebody had to be sworn in, unless the judge had a court order to say otherwise. And I said that I would postpone the case to December 2nd if nobody gets sworn in and the votes on either side that should have been counted the first time are not counted the second time. And I spoke to my attorney, and I was led to believe that he spoke to somebody in the Attorney General's office, and that was going to be the case. When we went to the recount, they just counted everything all over again. Even the votes that we clearly had certifications that people did not live in town. That's it. The person that I felt that should have been elected by the people of Rutherford, if it was me or John Parnofiello, should have been the people to represent the people of Rutherford.
Now, what did you do after the election? I know that there was an investigation. Can you describe what you did in terms of looking into the votes?
Yes. What I did was I did a search. I did a search on people that passed away, see if they voted, and nobody did. Thank God, yeah, nobody did.
It's a good place to start.
Right. I looked at. There was a few things that stood out. Like we had one person that was living in Hoboken, and I said, okay, and I'm not going to mention her name, but I said, okay, maybe she's going to school, because if she's going to Stevens, she would know. She's been on a lease, and she's not in school, so she's living in Hoboken. We had another person that was living in New York City, in Wall Street. She'd been on a lease for 2 years. We had another person that's living in Washington, D.C. And she moved to Colorado. She voted in Colorado. And she works for a major company down in Washington, D.C. And she voted absentee ballot. Now, what stood out with her, that she went from inactive to active. In other words, she was taken off the voter sheet, and because she did not live there, her ballot got sent back to the county. And when I asked, how did she get from inactive to active, I couldn't get an answer. So she voted, and she hasn't lived here in 5 years.
Now, one thing that I think that people have had questions about with the investigation after the election was Jerry McCann, who, former mayor of Jersey City, who left office after being convicted of a crime. When was he brought in to work on the campaign?
Jerry McCann, I know Jerry for a pretty long time, from playing ball in Jersey City, working, being involved. I was a committee man, one leader. I ran for the state assembly. And Jerry was always, I always liked Jerry. I thought he was an honest guy. He was the mayor of Jersey City. He started that whole renaissance down in the waterfront down there. He lost his re-election, and he started real estate, he was developing a real estate thing. That was back in 1987. That's when the stock market fell. He took out a loan. He couldn't get the answer. He took out a loan from the bank, and something happened with the bank. They tell him he went on developing something, and I don't know the whole case, but anyway, Jerry McCann. never cost the taxpayers a dollar. You know, he was a CPA. His daughter went to Rutherford High School. She was valedictorian. He was married in Rutherford. His family still lives in Rutherford. And he just asked me, he asked me if I needed any help. I said, well, Jerry, I hired an attorney, and I called the attorney's office, and they said, yes, we'd love to have him, because he's an expert in election law. And he actually worked with John Parnofiello's attorney on a case. So, you know, he never cost the taxpayers a dollar. He just came, you know, he came, he asked me if I needed help, and I accepted. You know, he's also, you know, he's a track coach for St. Peter's. He's an elected official. The Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that he's not corrupt.
Did he identify himself as part of your campaign as he went from door to door?
No. What happened was when we had the recount, and John Parnofiello could he could confirm this. John's attorney was writing down all these names, and John was copying them. I was copying them. You were there too. And there was stars and X's. I didn't know what they were doing. John didn't know what they were doing. You know, so, you know, what happened was there was a plan. And I said to Jerry, I don't want to go after, you know, certain technicalities with the voting by mail. I said, because I have evidence that people voted from out of town. And I lost by 1 vote, and I have 8 of them. And he said to me, well, he said, do you know anything about election law? And I said, no. He said, well, John's attorney is going to find technicalities. He says, so if he has 12 technicalities and you have a technical vote out of town, you lose. And so Jerry came in and he helped me with the investigation. He had nothing to do with my campaign prior, and he has nothing to do with my campaign now. And I think that he helped me uncover certain things that would have been difficult for me to do.
John, for you, a lot of questions have kind of involved your running mate, Maura Keyes. One of the allegations after the campaign was that she had improperly handled a ballot. Do you think that she acted ethically during the election?
Throughout the campaign, she was somebody that I trusted, somebody that gave me some guidance, being somebody that ran for the first time. It's not working. It sounds like it's working. I think it's not. Anyway, as far as the running mate is concerned, she was very helpful to me. Absolutely.